Hello, Adi Shankar here. Thank you for watching the Bootleg Universe Podcast, Episode 2. Today we talk about influences, we talk about DVD commentaries that are fucking awesome, and we talk about anxiety at premieres. And finally, last but not least, we talk about Brad Pitt. Cool. We're good to go? Let's do this. Maybe we should start with a question.
Sure.
Okay. What question should we answer?
Well, I thought that since this is only our second episode, before we get into more of the technical stuff that we're going to be discussing on later episodes, it might still be good to introduce ourselves a little bit to anyone who's watching. And a fun way to do that might be to talk about some of the artists who have had a huge influence on us. Just going around and talking about who we like, who's impacted our work, and how. Ken, why don't we start with you?
With me?
With Ken.
I just also want to point out for this exercise, we should not include me in the.
I was about to say
people that have impacted.
Yeah, I was going to start with Addy, and then Addy is also number 3.
Well, I guess I'm going to cross Addy off the list.
We should just cross me off of your list.
On the list.
I was literally about to say Addy Shankar, numero uno, of course. Right. Okay. You know, I was trying to think of like going back, because are we going specifically to people, or could they be like
no,
events?
Go as broad as you want to go.
Most filmmakers around my age, like when they cite a film that was like a big impact for them, very influential, was Jurassic Park. Like it's Jurassic Park. But
well, if you were 25, it came out before you were born.
Right. Jurassic Park 3. Just kidding. No, Jurassic Park. But for me, I would actually not necessarily say that, not taking anything away from Jurassic Park. It's an amazing film. I would say Tim Burton's 1989 Batman was probably a massive influence in creating a trajectory for me in a lot of ways. That doesn't mean, and I've been thinking about this because I'm like, I wouldn't say I'm by any stretch some type of expert or connoisseur in the films of Tim Burton, even though he's a incredible director and wonderful filmmaker. But that movie was just a huge like landmark in a weird way in terms of, I think, influencing, which I'm going to even say kind of weirdly links all the way to sitting at this table. Sure. In a certain sense.
Now, were you a comic book fan before that movie came out, or did that unlock the genre for you?
Yes. Well, I was already a comic book fan. I loved to draw when I was but a wee tyke. And my dad took us to the comic shop for the first time. And it was a monumental experience, kind of it was called the Bookshelf. And it was one of those old comic shops that just, smelled like cigars and smoke and old paper and, very kind of pulpy experience. And bought comic books. And
what was it about Tim Burton's Batman in particular that unlocked something for you? Was it the aesthetic? Was it the approach? What was the kernel there?
I remember when they played the trailer first. They played the trailer on like TV one time, or like on there during a program, and I called. It was the thing, like, this is a long time ago, but I called my best friend at the time. I think I was 9 or 10 years old, just so we could discuss like the trailer. And I think it was just the sense of a dark Batman that was very exciting. I was already a fan of the 1966 Adam West Batman movie, shark repellent and all that type of stuff. So it was just like something that I don't think anybody had ever seen before. And so maybe you had, but I was very young. So yes, was familiar with the darker side of Batman because it was the late 80s, but nobody had ever seen something like where it just looks so official.
I'm glad you brought up this movie first, because I think it really gets to something that we want to talk about today, which is the way other filmmakers that we enjoy have been influenced by films of the past. Because Tim Burton Batman obviously is hugely influenced by German Expressionism.
Mm-hmm. Metropolis.
Yeah, exactly.
Like
Metropolis,
literally shots of Fritz Lang's
Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, the entire design aesthetic of that movie, the way he uses shadows, the way he positions the camera is so indebted to these artists of the 20s and 30s. But, you know, if you're the average person who's not up on film history at that time, you're watching that and you're just like, oh, I guess this is what superheroes are. But in fact, he brought that into the genre.
Yes. And obviously like leaning heavy into, you know, all the noir and those aspects. And I think of like when you were just talking about that, like just the scene when the doctor unwraps his face and he looks at it for the first time and he starts like almost like crying weirdly, and they're like a basement and it's just like very dark, and the doctor is like one of the old school doctors that you would see from a film, you know, like that, and he's, do you see what I have to work with? Like it's very like influenced in this cool way. But
I would also say, I mean, the Joker himself is like based on, what is it, The Man Who Laughs, classic film from the 1930s. It's always been in there, that kind of influence. Tim Burton just brought something from the, at that point, not so distant past, only 45, 50 years before then, and infused it into this genre that has now become the staple of mainstream filmmaking.
Yeah, absolutely.
Addy, what about you?
Are we talking films or just
anything? Film, wrestling, comic books.
Wrestling.
Yeah.
Wrestling.
How did you get into wrestling as somebody who wasn't growing up in America?
It was on TV. Like my dad was flipping through the channels and it was on TV. And it was one of the things that he flipped through. And I saw like the Macho Man like running into the ring, and someone was kicking someone else. And I was like, that's amazing. And he was like, don't watch that. It's stupid.
My dad said the same thing to me, but I listened to him, unfortunately.
And I was like, wait, no, that means I have to watch this. Yeah. There was something like real, something like authentic about wrestling. There was something that I just felt like it was an accurate portrayal of how people behave or want to behave or how they should behave.
That's so interesting, because obviously wrestling is often held up as, you know, very artificial.
Right.
So what was it exactly that you were seeing in that was real? Was it that it was just taking something that was real and exaggerating it and blowing it up into these kabuki-esque sizes? What is the kernel of realness?
There's a few things. So from a story structure perspective, right? Wrestling's just a Western. It's meditations on good versus evil, and
white hats
really,
and black hats,
right? And then
Heels
how
and
do you
faces.
go about getting justice? Right? Someone wrongs you. How do you go about getting justice? And then how do you go about getting justice without becoming the bad guy? Because that happens a lot in wrestling, right? Like there's like a famous wrestling match at WrestleMania 13 where Stone Cold Steve Austin was fighting Bret Hart. Bret Hart was the good guy. Stone Cold was the bad guy. Halfway through the match, the crowd turned on Bret Hart, and Stone Cold walked away the good guy, and Bret Hart became the bad guy.
And how did that happen? What was Bret Hart doing? Was he just gloating? Was he?
He was taking it too far, and he was using heel tactics to take down his nemesis.
I see. So he had become the thing that he was fighting against.
Exactly.
And when you're thinking about,
but also like, there's an element with wrestling where there's like people in the ring, and then there's a live audience that's like responding to this in real time, right? So if your performance is false, the audience smells that right away. And they won't boo you, they just won't react. So there's a visceral connection that the performer has with the audience that's based on some form of truth.
So when you're thinking about the projects that you work on, what are the elements of that you're bringing into it?
I don't know if
to the audience, the relationship between good and evil.
How has it influenced?
I don't know if it has or it hasn't. I haven't really thought about it that perspective, other than like, oh, I think wrestling's really cool, and not everyone does. And then I also don't come across as your prototypical person who watches wrestling. I think people are shocked sometimes when they realize like, oh, this guy like knows a lot about wrestling.
So after your dad was flipping through those channels and you saw it and you just like, I gotta know what this is. Were you sneaking downstairs at night and turning on the TV while your parents were asleep? Were you?
No, I just kind of, whenever it would come on and see it, I'd try to watch it and understand what was going on. Mm-hmm. And then I would see kind of like glimpses of it sometimes, right? But it was also, wrestling's interesting in that it's like a long-term soap opera that's taking place over decades.
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. So I would like follow a little bit and stop following because like, again, didn't have access. Then you would start again and then you'd be like, oh, what happened to that person? And that person who I thought was good has now become evil and joined a faction with these other people, and now they're like all vampire people or whatever like wacky wrestling storyline happened. And it wasn't until like two things happened. So I was visiting my cousins in India. So we were living in Hong Kong at the time, and I was visiting my cousins in India. This was this summer going into the 7th grade or 8th grade, one of them. And Cartoon Network was a big deal in India.
Okay.
As it is here. But at midnight, Cartoon Network turned back into TNT. And there was the chief competitor to World Wrestling Federation at the time was another company called World Championship Wrestling. I didn't even know this thing existed. But it was on. And all of a sudden it was like it was like watching a parallel universe version of wrestling. Because at the time, World Championship Wrestling had all of the old WWF
Hulk
guys
Hogan
from the 80s and early 90s here, but they were like playing different variations of their characters, and they had like their real names and stuff, and it was a more reality-based program. So my mind was blown. I was like, whoa, this is crazy. And I was like very young, but I kind of figured out what happened. I was like, someone got a bucket load of money and then like hired all these people and then kind of changed their characters a little bit. It was kind of like a bootleg WWE, but like gritty, dark, like they were like attacking each other with baseball bats as they like came in through the crowd, and they would like run away, and like cops were involved. You know what I mean? It was like this really like dark interpretation of wrestling. And then there was also like the Stone Cold Steve Austin storyline that was concurrently happening in World Wrestling Federation, which kind of blew my mind.
Was this the Stone Cold 316?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because I didn't understand this character.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, I didn't get it. But then I liked that he just kept rebelling against authority figures. And at the time, I was letting Hong Kong was a British colony being handed over to China. I'd lived under these kind of strict societal guardrails. This sandbox where like you were kind of forced to go into like one path. And if it was multiple choice, there was like two other paths, but that's it, right? You got to like, and everyone had to behave a specific way. And if you weren't behaving that way, it was like frowned upon. And all of a sudden there was this guy who was like flipping people off, drinking beer, and like giving his boss the stunner. I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. I want to rebel against everyone too. This is exactly what I want to do. That's where it came from.
See, there you go.
Yeah.
You were like, I want to rebel against everything.
Mm-hmm.
But I wanted to rebel against everything. I was just seeing this expression of it on TV from a person who embodied that spirit of rebellion pretty authentically in Steve.
Because what's fascinating about wrestling, especially at that time, was the corporate superstructure of Vince McMahon and the company that was employing all these people was part of the storyline.
Absolutely. And that corporate infrastructure felt like the world I was living in.
Right.
You know, it was like corporate governance, corporate apparatus, kids whose parents worked at a corporation, people wearing suits, like that whole that whole thing.
If you want to take it one step further, that rebellion was itself being orchestrated by the corporation that they were supposedly rebelling against as a performative sign of rebellion. Am I wrong?
I think it happened more organically than that. This wasn't like a premeditated storyline. Like what I mean, I can break down how it actually happened if you guys find that interesting.
Sure.
Yeah.
So, do you guys know who Bret the Hitman Hart is, the wrestler? Bret Hart?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So, 1997, World Championship Wrestling existed, right? And they'd taken all the old WWF guys, paid them a ton of money, and were like crushing. They had like a live television program backed by Ted Turner. Like it was. They were kicking ass, right? And you had WWF that was floundering-ish, right? Bret the Hitman Hart was the WWF's like top guy. He was leaving to go to WCW, and he was the champion.
Mm-hmm.
Without getting into like the specifics and the nuance of it, Vince McMahon in real life, he pulled a shady move on live pay-per-view and screwed over Bret Hart on like live pay-per-view. And they were like pretending it was a storyline, but it like wasn't. Bret Hart flips out, punches Vince McMahon in the face, spits on the TV, and starts going, WCW tomorrow. Like this was like real. This was like a real thing that like happened. You know what I mean? Like
the contract dispute spilled over into the storyline itself.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, like on TV. Like like actually like fuck. It was like a real thing. And the audience started going, hey, this Vince McMahon guy is like kind of an asshole. Like the real dude, not the and he was a commentator at the time. He wasn't like the bad guy. Like he would come in and like interview wrestlers, and people were like, fuck this guy.
And so that's when Vince McMahon embraced being
the bad
heel.
guy. The bad guy.
Yeah.
Right? So when Stone Cold started like attacking him and giving him the stunner, and the whole storyline was like built on the idea that Vince McMahon did not want this guy to be the champion because this guy is not the type of person that we want representing this company. That was his character motivation. Right? He's like, I want this other guy. This is a good representative of this company, not you, Stone Cold. The audience bought it because this was again using the real heat.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so it wasn't like a corporate orchestration. It happened organically. Weirdly enough, I called Stone Cold out of the blue yesterday.
Really?
Yeah, I just called him out of the blue yesterday.
I mean, you do this a lot, just calling people out of the blue. I feel like this is how you know most of the people that you know.
Right, but I haven't. Last time I saw Stone Cold was like 2015, and it wasn't like one-on-one. Like he was moderating a thing for DDP.
Mm.
And then I like saw him in the green room. He's like, hey, how the hell are you? And I'm like, oh, you remember me? That's awesome. And before that, I'd like met him. We had like a meeting once in like 2011. And I spoke to him once on the phone where I invited him to the premiere of The Gray, and his car had broken down. And he was in the middle of the street somewhere, and his car had broken down.
Oh man. And did that bring, I mean, your love of wrestling as a child eventually led to you being able to connect with wrestlers and even bring them into the Guardians of Justice, which I think is like a really kind of innovative casting.
Well, that didn't come from my love of wrestling. That came from my love of John Carpenter.
Oh,
right.
Okay.
Because if you look at They Live,
mm-hmm.
They Live starred Roddy Piper.
Oh, yeah,
right?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And Guardians, like a big piece of it, as you guys know, because you guys made it with me. It was an homage to John Carpenter.
Mm-hmm.
And also separately, DDP and I are like very, very good friends. That has nothing to do with the fact that he was a wrestler that I watched growing up. He just happened to be, he's just a great guy. And also like, he's out there in the world trying to help other people.
Mm-hmm.
He's just trying to help people. That's like his mission in life, right? And I really connect deeply with people who engage in that frequency.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, we're just friends.
Yeah.
That's cool.
I think that's a good point to transition to. I think somebody who's obviously influenced all three of us,
Mm-hmm.
which is John Carpenter.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
One of the greatest genre filmmakers of all time,
Mm-hmm.
obviously. I know, Addie, you're a big fan of They Live.
Yes.
I think The Thing is top 5 movie of all time for me.
Mm-hmm.
Huge influence, especially the use of practical special effects.
Yes.
Because one of the main influences I was going to bring up for myself was the horror movement of like the 70s through the 80s, where the practical effects got increasingly more inventive and innovative. Because I was like a math and science nerd growing up who liked movies and had seen a lot of movies, but it was this out of left field thing where like I didn't know how to become a filmmaker. I didn't know what a filmmaker was. But then when I was like 11 or 12, I started watching these classic horror movies, and suddenly you watch something like Dawn of the Dead with Tom Savini's special effects, or The Thing with Rob Bottin's effects. And even though I couldn't replicate them, suddenly I realized that movies were kind of an engineering problem. It was a series of things you could build and problems that you could solve using math and science and technology in order to create something that nobody had ever seen before.
Wow.
Did you ever make your own like movies growing
Oh
up?
yeah. No,
VHS
I
camera
would
type thing?
I would pick a special effect, some kind of simple special effect that I saw in a horror movie.
Something disturbing, probably.
Right. And then design a short film around that effect.
Mm-hmm.
So
For sure. Yeah.
I would get my little brother, who was 4 years younger than me, to just run around in our backyard while I filmed him with a camcorder. And like one time I was really into trying to figure out reverse motion techniques. So I would like wrap ropes and extension cords around his arms and legs like he was being attacked by them, and then pull them off and then reverse the motion so it looked like they were leaping out and grabbing his arms and legs and attacking him. Or another time, did you have like those little cap guns growing up
Yeah, of course.
with a little paper roll?
Mhm.
Yeah.
They probably don't even sell those anymore. It's probably too dangerous
Yeah.
for
They're like,
kids.
someone got canceled for making them.
But yeah, they would create a little explosion from this tiny amount of gunpowder on a piece of paper on this roll, and the hammer
Wait,
would
that was
hit it.
real gunpowder? Powder?
Yeah, it's like
Mhm.
real
Oh,
gunpowder.
wow.
But if you took that roll of paper that had like 100 of these little pieces of gunpowder on it and lit it on fire, it would blow up. So I would build like little miniature sets or like use forced perspective and like put the roll of cap gunpowder inside and then blow it up and then build shorts around, those things getting blown up.
Do you feel like had you not been a writer, you would have wanted to go into practical effects, that type of thing?
Yeah, because I was doing all that
Because
as
a math and
as a
science
teenager.
nerd and also loving movies kind of creates a perfect combo for that.
Yeah, I just liked writing too much, and also I disliked being around other people too much at the time. It was like, okay, if I'm going to be a director, I have to like gather like a group of 10 friends together and tell them what to do.
It's amazing how much you reverse engineered the process as a young person.
Mhm.
Like I just assumed that a computer was making everything. Like I was like, I don't know if this is actually this person even exists. Well, at first I thought it was like people in plays I thought it was like kind of slaves in the box who would just
I think we all did when we were kids.
Right.
Like, oh, there must be somebody inside that
Right.
machine. Yeah.
Mhm.
and it went from that to, oh, there's a computer that's like making this. It's like kind of like hitting print and just.
I had like this whole theory when I was a little kid that like when I saw someone die on screen, it was like, okay, they must have like given them $1 million to just have like the best year of their life before they shot them.
Oh yeah, I had that same.
Wow, that's
same,
a script right there,
yeah.
Sam. So
That's stacked. Yeah.
Yeah, some out of control filmmakers like, listen, we must film the real death.
yeah,
That's how we'll get truth.
yeah.
But yeah, when you watch The Thing,
Like Universal Studios is like, okay, we're in.
Yeah.
We're in.
when you watch The Thing, it's just one incredible special effect after another. I think Rob Bottin was like 22 when he did all the creature and gore effects for that movie.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's just mind blowing what they were able to accomplish. But yeah, it's all latex, and where do you put the camera, and how do you cut from one shot of a creature that does one thing to another shot where you have a different model that looks the same but can do something else in order to create one sequence where it can do a bunch of things. And yeah, so that was the thing that started the thing that started the gears turning in my brain when I was a kid, that, oh, there's a way to apply the thing that I love, which is science, to this other thing that I love, which is people getting blown up on screen.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And do you feel like you, I'll say, grew out of that desire, like the scientific side of you kind of have gone past it into more, or do you just apply your science to writing? Because
the joy of working on Guardians with you guys has been that not only do I get to do some writing, but I get to go back to the, how do we accomplish this?
Mm-hmm.
How do we engineer this sequence side of things, which is something we'll get into in later episodes when we really break down, especially episode 7. But because it was, for the two of us, it was always a challenge of, we have limited resources. How do we make something that looks really cool with what we have?
Mm-hmm.
And it's about camera angle and, taking this shot from one place and cutting it with this to make something completely new.
Yeah. Yeah. Reverse engineering, in a weird way, is a big part of the filmmaking process. Mm-hmm. And would you say that The Thing is your favorite John Carpenter film?
Easily. Okay. Easily. I mean, I love John Carpenter. I love Escape from New York. I was about to say that's my favorite John Carpenter film, largely probably because of the protagonist. Yeah.
Just kind of the cool.
We should call John Carpenter.
Let's call him right now.
Call him right now. Let's fucking do it. Let's fucking do it.
Well, are we actually doing that?
I don't know.
Okay.
Let me see if I have his number. Oh, I do. Oh, fuck yeah, I do.
Let's give him a. Just call him up.
John Carpenter.
Just call him up. Yeah. Hey, hold on.
Are you going to make us talk to him, or?
I don't know. Should we just call him right now?
Well, I mean,
I feel like I need to prepare for that a little bit more.
Emotionally trained for this.
That's what I was doing yesterday. I just woke up and I was like, I'm just going to just call people from just 10 years ago. I ended up calling Stone Cold, but there's a version where, we should call John Carpenter one day.
Okay, let's do it. Let's do it.
Yeah,
call him.
That's the perfect segue, I'll say, in a weird way.
Well, I want to talk about Escape from New York.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Let's talk Escape from New York, because there's the two sides to John Carpenter, right? He's a brilliant visual filmmaker, but he also has just this incredible story sense. Yeah. And Escape from New York is really the best example of that. Manhattan is a prison. The president has crash landed in the prison. They're sending in Snake Plissken, the greatest badass on the planet. They've injected his brain with a thing that's going to detonate, and he has 24 hours to get the president out of the prison where all the worst people in the world have been trapped. I mean, it's the greatest premise that anyone 100%. Has ever come up with in movie history.
Yeah.
And it's like the stakes are so clear. You are understanding exactly what the situation is 10 minutes into that movie, and you are off and running. They're sending him in 10 minutes into that movie.
I saw that movie the same day I saw Star Wars.
Oh, wow.
And I was definitely more into Escape from New York.
Mm-hmm.
Was Escape from New York one of those movies that was released like the same month as E.T.?
Same month.
No, I think Escape from New York was like in the 70s.
No, it was
like
81 or 82.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I think both Escape from New York, or no, The Thing. The Thing was the John Carpenter that was the victim of E.T.
Oh, yeah.
81,
Yeah, The Thing was 82, along with Blade Runner. They both got like just destroyed.
There's like a bunch of movies, like The Warriors being another one of them, like where I just, in my mind, I'm like, no, it's an 80s movie, but you're like, no, there's also like a late 70s kind of,
yeah.
You know, they hadn't like fully leaned into like the full 80s thing.
The Warriors is another one of my absolute favorite movies of all time.
Yeah.
My father-in-law is from Brooklyn, so he lived in New York City almost his entire life. And I showed my wife The Warriors. She grew up on Long Island. She was like, this is so ridiculous. New York has never even been close to that. I was like, no, it's kind of a dystopian, a little bit futuristic, but it was drawing from what was already happening in New York in the 70s. And then I watched it with my father-in-law, and he was like, yeah, that's pretty close to how it was. A little bit more makeup and costumes, but that's basically what we were dealing with.
Yeah. After hearing you pitch Escape from New York, I realized that I think that's the biggest influence on all of us, and that's pretty much the end of this. No,
well, The Warriors,
for sure.
The Warriors is another one with a great premise because it's just people have to get from A to B. Mm-hmm. We're on one side of the city. We're in the Bronx. We got to get to Coney Island, and every gang in the city wants to kill us.
Yeah.
How do we do it? It's just point A to point B. I'm in Manhattan. I got to rescue the president and get out. Yeah. Very, very simple.
Which I think, obviously speaks to just storytelling in general, is like achieving a certain level of simplicity is actually in a weird way the greatest challenge. Yeah. That something that's your protagonist has a clear objective and you're just making it as difficult as possible, but it's very clear and the audience can get with it pretty quickly.
Are you guys familiar with like the post Warriors, Escape from New York, Road Warrior, Italian grindhouse dystopian movies of the 80s?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But I think you should definitely.
Yeah. So after it's basically those three movies: The Warriors, Escape from New York, and The Road Warrior, were all these like cultural phenomenon in like a 3 to 4 year period. And the Italian grindhouse industry, which was always ripping off whatever was popular at the time, made dozens of movies that regurgitated elements of those three. So there's like Escape from the Bronx and 1990, The Bronx Warriors. There's The Warriors of the Wasteland, Centurions of the Year 3000, The Atlantis Interceptors, which are all these weird low budget movies, some of which are quite interesting and inventive.
Yeah. Some of which that we borrowed heavily from Guardians of Justice.
Yeah. There's a specific thing in the Bronx Warriors that I want to bring into something we do, which is the two rival gangs are having this meeting like by the Hudson, or maybe it's the East River, I don't know. And throughout the entire scene, there's just a drummer in the background through the entire scene, and Enzo G. Castellari just keeps cutting to this drummer who's just randomly there. I really want to do that, just have like a random musician in the background while our characters are having an intense meeting about who they're going to kill.
That's going in.
Yeah,
that's
whatever.
But what's
that in a saxophone? Jack dude with a saxophone.
Oh,
but if you want to know like how to recycle genre elements, look to what the Italians do after there's a genre movement in America or elsewhere in the world. The spaghetti western movement, the Polizio Tescis, all these the giallos, all these movements where they took elements from other cinematic movements around the world and changed them slightly and moved the elements around to create something wholly new and interesting. And I think that's kind of what we're doing with Guardians, certainly, but I think it's obviously what somebody like Quentin Tarantino has been doing for a long time.
For sure.
That's why he cites Castellari and those guys.
Well, I think that's also what you're doing with your next film that we talked about last time.
I mean,
Your Roger Rabbit inspired
absolutely
masterpiece.
In the sense that, thank you. It is, exactly. There's a lot of, elements from different genres and all that being basically pulled together and trying to essentially create something that feels cohesive and, is amalgamating this stuff and different influences, and then also being as innovative in terms of filmmaking and the filmmaking process as well. I have another quote, Sam, from Orson Welles, in which he said, "The only thing I fear..."
A guest star of Guardians of Justice. Episode 7.
Absolutely. One of the stars of Guardians of Justice.
Continue.
It was once quoted as saying, "The only thing I fear is art with no limitations."
Mm-hmm.
And so, in a lot of ways, it's the limitations that you have as an artist are the things, or a technician within kind of an artistic field are the things that actually push you to create something new. And
for sure.
So, yeah. And I guess like moving a little bit, rolling forward with like the John Carpenter influence, I would say for me, another influence has been, and this probably isn't surprising for a filmmaker in my age or kind of in this realm, would be Robert Rodriguez, obviously, who was heavily influenced by a lot of, I think, the films that you're talking about, like, Road Warrior and Escape from New York. And also I saw Escape from LA in theaters when I was
that really
teenager.
Dates you.
I did. I still remember.
That was 91, right? 94.
That was, I think,
later.
94. Yeah. And I still remember it was in this very old theater, huge
so weird.
screen. So it was pretty epic.
Escape from LA is like weird.
Yeah.
It's weird.
There's a scene where I think he surfs.
Yes, with Peter Fonda. Yeah, it's interesting because it is in many ways like a cross between Escape from New York and Big Trouble in Little China in tone of like that parodying the 80s action movie and the 80s action movie archetype that in many ways Kurt Russell and John Carpenter created together. But let's get back to Rodriguez.
Yeah, because go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, if you watch El Mariachi, which I kind of still think is his best movie,
it is. I mean,
what he's doing on such a limited budget is astonishing, but it's not astonishing if you realize that he is thinking through every single shot and every single cut exactly before he even starts filming. Because even on that limited $6,000 budget, those action sequences are insanely compelling. It doesn't require big set pieces. It can just be a guy, climbing over a set of stairs or running down an alley, but he cuts it in such a way that you're just drawn into it because he has such a strong control over the visual language of film.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and he knows all the parts and pieces in advance required to create the scene, and then is very ambitious, with the bus and all those different type of things, and then really I think he ends it. One of probably the strengths of the film in a weird way is that it ends on a tragic note. Yeah. And so he showed a lot of, I think, boldness, with the story. It was like, I'm not going to necessarily do something that you'll definitely find entertaining and crowd pleasing, but I'll definitely take a risk and like be willing to end him on a darker note, which I think was, showed a lot of guts. So
especially at the time.
Yeah.
Are you a big fan of like his 10-minute film schools?
Oh yeah. Cooking school, all those things. Yeah, of course.
I don't know what the state of special features is in contemporary Blu-ray releases.
Oh, they're still pretty good. They're still pretty good.
But yeah,
they'll have to be, right? Otherwise,
I thought that my feeling is that new movies being released have much worse, less interesting special features, but I think it is worth it for anybody who wants to study filmmaking to buy the physical media of El Mariachi, Desperado, and Once Upon a Time in Mexico, because the 10-minute film schools, his breakdowns of how scenes are shot and constructed is so invaluable.
Mhm.
I learned so much from that when I was
Absolutely.
a kid.
When I was in film school, I remember when our editing teacher said to us, you can learn more from the Magnolia DVD, the Fight Club DVD, and the Three Kings DVD about filmmaking than you will at film school, which was pretty amazing. Of course,
What were those movies again? Fight Club,
Magnolia,
Three
and
Kings?
Three Kings. And I would honestly say Bad Boys 2. Bad Boys 2 has one of the best behind the scenes ever.
Also some movies that weren't made within 1 year of the year 2000.
Yeah, how weird. But it was amazing because at the time, yeah, you really had like they were, I think, still figuring out the world at that time of special features. And so I think the Lord of the Rings in a weird way was something that really turned special features into like, they added a certain kind of class and glossiness to it, which was really fantastic. Like those behind the scenes and on the Lord of the Rings DVDs are just as entertaining. I think there's probably a lot of people who became filmmakers because of the behind the scenes of the Lord of the Rings as much as the films themselves. But there was definitely a period as well before that there was like a raw quality to a lot of the behind the scenes stuff. So if you can find Blu-rays and DVDs that were released in that era, you'll find, I think, a very kind of like, you're like standing on set while, Paul Thomas Anderson is directing Magnolia, and you're watching David Russell go through, I think, the highs and lows of trying to get Three Kings made, which is pretty crazy when you watch it. And so, well, we kind of branched off into Blu-rays and behind the scenes, but yes, very influential.
Also, listen to the audio commentaries of directors you admire on their movies.
Yes, wait, can I mention two great audio commentaries?
Not the Ben Affleck one.
Wait, one, Armageddon?
Yeah.
Oh, that one's fun.
Okay.
Armageddon Criterion. That one's that's not a bad audio commentary. Great audio commentaries, of course. Roger Ebert's audio commentary for Dark City will blow your mind.
Really?
Yes, absolutely. It's a film school in and of itself. He breaks down Alex Proyas's Dark City just in a way that
like
was
Roger Ebert, like the
Roger Ebert did the audio commentary for Dark City.
Wow.
Dark City was like his favorite movie.
Yeah. He
Really?
did it.
Yeah.
Yeah. He did like a big like film symposium or something
Like
that.
shot by shot
For 4 days at like, I think the University of Colorado. I'm like literally just trying to remember.
Why was Dark City his favorite movie?
It was Alex Proyas's attention to unbelievable levels of visual detail, to where like every single shot you could pause and analyze every shot, every cut, every moment, even to when John drops the knife in the opening. Like he analyzed like how the knife drops, and it was very specific. It wasn't just like, okay, we got to grab the shot, let's get it and let's go. Like Alex Proyas just shows a control over film. Like,
What happened to Alex Proyas?
well, The Crow is amazing.
Yeah.
And then Dark City, released a year before The Matrix, which also will come up probably in this conversation.
Which is super kind of unfair. Because like The Matrix and Dark City and Equilibrium are three completely different like movies. And yet they get kind of like lumped in together. Like, oh, they didn't work because of The Matrix. You're like, what? Like one's like a kung fu.
Right. It's sort of like they get lumped together because they all have people wearing trench coats.
Right. And yeah, I was going to say
and
shooting
like,
guns, but
yeah. And they kind of, I guess Dark City and Matrix are both about like reality. Not about, they have like a
There's
reality, a mind bending,
a group of things controlling humanity and altering the very nature of reality itself.
Yeah.
I see the thematic comparison between Dark City and The Matrix, and I see sort of the visual comparison between The Matrix and Equilibrium.
yeah.
but it's kind of weird too, right? That like they're all kind of like lumped in together. I guess that just kind of speaks to how boxed in sci-fi science fiction used to be, because it was like, oh, that's like a niche thing. It's for nerds.
Yeah, no, that's totally true. It's funny because I mean, Alex Proyas did do iRobot. I think trying to kind of branch out blend.
Did Knowing, right?
Oh, he
The
did
Nicolas
do Knowing.
Cage.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Nicolas Cage film.
His last one was The Gods of Egypt.
Gods
Yeah.
of Egypt,
I think he just got
which I saw in the theater.
he got pulled into the big budget Hollywood system, which was not where he was ever going to excel.
Right, yeah, because if you look again, you look at like Dark City, and we'll say The Crow, which I think The Crow is much more influential on modern superhero films than it gets credit for.
Absolutely. Well, he's. I guess my confusion with I haven't met Alex Proyas, and like I don't know him, but he strikes me as a guy who's like more a guy who's like influenced by Hitchcock.
Mm-hmm.
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 He's like he's like a Hitchcockian world builder.
Mm-hmm.
Right. He has a precision to his filmmaking, which is, I mean, I watched like half of Gods of Egypt. It was not a precisely made movie.
What's interesting is the way you just described him is very close to how Roger Ebert actually describes him in the audio commentary.
Wow.
He actually says, because he says the same thing. He says, I don't know him. I've never met him. But he says, if I remember correctly, he says, he strikes me as the type of filmmaker who loves to be up to his elbows in kind of like the filmmaking.
He's an auteur.
Yes.
He's an auteur as well, right? Because he's like complete control over like every
aspect of
it. And it's like you don't get Dark City from a committee.
Right. It's such a vision of a film. Yeah. Wow. I didn't expect to go down this path. But
what was your second audio
the second
commentary?
best audio commentary is Mark Gordon and Graham Yost's audio commentary for the movie Speed. And
Mark Gordon was one of the producers?
He was one of the producers, and Graham Yost was the screenwriter. And what's amazing is how they do this audio commentary that they basically expect absolutely nobody will listen to them, because they're like, nobody's going to listen to us. Nobody knows who we are compared to whatever.
And Speed was directed by the DP.
Jan de Bont.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And he was the DP of Die Hard.
Yeah. And so it's just that one's just fun and entertaining. It's just funny to listen to two guys talk, and with the expectation that nobody will ever listen to their audio.
So when did Mark Gordon record this? Because that was like kind of early in his career.
Yes, Speed came out in 1994, and then this I probably watched on the audio commentary on DVD probably 2001 or 2002. And I remember even putting it on for people when they would come, like film friends or hanging out or whatever, and they would get into it because they were like really funny and just doing an audio commentary with the expectation no one will ever listen to it, so they just talk very freely. It's great.
Wow.
But anyway, yeah,
I've got since we're on commentaries, I've got a couple. Number one is the George Romero audio commentaries for Dawn of the Dead and Day of the Dead, because they're just pure film school. Here's how we did this shot. Here's how we did this effect. Here's how we got around this production problem. It is everything you could ever want to know about making a low budget film.
Mm-hmm.
And on a similar note, David Cronenberg's commentaries are really, really good, especially for The Fly, which is a lot of technical stuff of how they did effects, but also getting into the themes of the movie.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow. This is great. Audio commentary. People don't talk about audio commentaries.
So few filmmakers. No, this is part of my problem with modern physical releases. Is a lot of the newer movies don't have audio commentaries. I don't think filmmakers take the time to sit down and record them as much anymore.
Right. And you can get Christopher Nolan does an audio commentary on the movie Following. I think that's the only one he's ever done.
Right. Why doesn't Christopher Nolan have an audio commentary for all of his movies? I want to listen to him talk through how he made all of his movies.
Yeah. No, it's funny because there really is, in a weird way, and I know that I speak maybe for myself, but also for you, Sam, a little bit, that we're big physical media guys.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of funny that like there will be, in a weird way, in the era of filmmaking, this 20-year section where Blu-rays and DVDs existed, and a lot of like information was just downloaded onto them as an incentive ultimately for people to walk into Best Buy and buy the Blu-ray because they felt like they were getting, or the DVD because they felt they were getting a little extra. But with streaming or those type of things, those things may,
Well, people
disappear to a degree.
don't feel the need to purchase physical media when they can stream it. PSA: streamers are not your friends. They are not going to have every movie you like until the end of time. You want to have physical media so that you can watch what you want. And older physical media is going to have all these special features and commentaries. And there's so much filmmaking knowledge in the commentaries of great movies by great filmmakers. Yeah. Because oftentimes they sit down for 2 hours and they want to tell you how they did everything. Oh, a great one, a weirdly great one is Nora Ephron's commentary. I think it's with Lauren Schuler Donner for You've Got Mail. Oh. Because that is a strangely visually complex film with a lot of really interesting production elements and camera movements, and she gets into the nitty-gritty of how he filmed that movie, and it is fascinating in a movie that I think a lot of people would watch and be like, oh, it's just a rom-com, but it is a visually complex and
it's a big movie. That's like a big blockbuster.
Oh yeah. It definitely like hit the zeitgeist back in the day.
But there's so much knowledge out there that is just sitting on physical media.
Everybody.
Waiting to teach you how to make movies.
Yes, The Rock, also great audio commentary. And also, because I think it's split between Ed Harris and I think Michael Bay and a couple others. And I will say Michael Bay's audio commentary on the first Transformers film also quite good, very entertaining and very informative. I think that's the thing. You're always trying to find people who are willing to give a lot of information about their process, and then know how to make it kind of entertaining and fun to listen to. So,
well, he's a very technical filmmaker. Whether you like his movies or not, he is a very precise technical filmmaker who gets exactly the shots that he wants, and they're very complicated, difficult shots to get, and it's valuable to know how somebody like that does that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's great.
I feel like there's too many podcasts about film. Like
if we
got rid of podcasts about film and people instead like watched the audio, you know what I mean? Like that's such a better use of time versus watching like some people who are being like, I don't like Mandalorian.
I think we're providing a valuable service here because there are no podcasts that are just three men talking about movies.
Right.
That doesn't exist.
I know. Where can you find that? Anywhere on the internet. But
are there? I don't know, but are there podcasts about people talking about movies who are actually making movies?
Probably Script Notes.
Script Notes from a screenwriting perspective. Empire Magazine they're not filmmakers, but they do a very good job of getting into the nitty gritty with filmmakers. All their ones with Christopher McQuarrie.
Oh my god!
Discussing the Mission Impossible movies are excellent.
Yes, those are some of the best interviews ever.
I'm really like into the emotional journey. You know, like McQuarrie, for instance, when he just leaned into the fact that like he should be hired to do something. Right? Remember he got into that in one of those interviews.
Yeah,
where he was like, "Hey, I was trying to get my own projects off the ground, and that stalled his career."
Oh yes, yeah. Right. Well, he talks about and then I think
that is very valuable to young people coming up.
Right. I think it was Tom Cruise who helped kind of, I'll say, refocus him in a certain way. I think that's an audio. If I'm not mistaken, that's an interview he did on Jeff Goldsmith's.
Talk about what he said.
Well, I'm trying to remember.
People might not know.
I'm trying to remember it as best as I can. So if I get it wrong, I apologize.
He wrote Usual Suspects.
He wrote The Usual Suspects. He won the Academy Award, I think, when he was like
26.
26?
He was 26.
26. He wrote Usual Suspects, but came out in what year?
1994, 5, probably.
Yeah.
In that realm.
And then he wrote and directed The Way of the Gun, which was a notorious flop.
Yeah. Ryan Felipe.
And then I know Valkyrie,
which was his next thing, also for Bryan Singer, who directed The Usual Suspects. But that was not until like
2006 or 7.
I think it may have even been later than that.
Was it?
But anyway, it was many years after The Way of the Gun, and he was in the wilderness for much of his 30s. And Valkyrie, which was not a hit, but starred Tom Cruise.
Fred Cruz brought him in.
Right.
Yeah, and then he
Sarah,
had,
yes.
if I remember correctly, he was working on this big historical epic and that he loved. And I don't remember what exactly it was, but he was trying to get it done. And then he, I think, was working, I can't remember what part this was within him working with Tom Cruise, if this was like before they did Jack Reacher or around that time.
Yeah.
But I think Tom Cruise kind of looked him in the eye and said, I think we need to focus on movies that we know can get made, which was, I think, is in a weird way, if that's the part you're kind of thinking of, is like, but I think one of the most honest things somebody could say to somebody, where you're like really dropping a truth bomb on them in a sense of like, you know, saying the thing that they probably never want to hear, but also doing a huge service in going like, I'm here to help you achieve the goal that you're trying to achieve, which is get films made. So, you know, we need to kind of like have a certain sensibility about, you know, what we're doing, rather than just kind of, you know, it's a crazy thing because you have this passion dream project. I'm sure that's probably what it was for him.
Yeah.
And how do you kind of, you know, find the balance between that dream project you have, but also the films that, you know, you want to actually direct.
Dude, I see this all the time. It's crazy that it even happens on that level, on that scale with like McQuarrie, who again, like, he had a fucking Oscar.
Yeah, that's crazy.
He had a fucking Oscar
for a movie that is still beloved.
Yeah.
And has really stood the test of time.
Yeah.
I mean, it's insane how many people I meet who are like, who don't care about how the apparatus of Hollywood or the film industry or the film ecosystem works. And they're like, no, I'm going to write 1950s style musicals. And you're like, okay, but this is not going to get made.
Right. So how do you balance between, I think, you know, how does a filmmaker find a balance between, you know, those two things of like still finding a certain level of creative satisfaction in what you're doing, but also understanding that you might have to be a certain level of a part of a machine in order to get something made that's bigger than you?
I don't think it's a balance. I think it's all ego.
Yeah.
And then once you drop the ego,
I think you can find artistic satisfaction in just about anything.
Yeah.
I think if they came to all of us tomorrow and said, make a Teletubbies movie.
Be the best one.
I mean,
ever.
I'd be so in.
Oh yeah.
Not an R-rated edgelord Teletubbies movie, but just like the best Teletubbies movie. We could do it, and we could find
for sure
an emotional in, an artistic in that would excite us. But like Addie said, you have to set your ego aside. You have to say, you can't say I'm above this. I mean, I think about like James Gunn making the Scooby-Doo movies, which was obviously a huge break after, you know, his work in Trauma. He found an artistic interesting into those movies. He didn't say, fuck Scooby-Doo. I'm so much better than this.
He does kind of be like, he almost feels like a bit of like he could be Shaggy.
James. Oh yeah.
Could have played Shaggy.
It's just like losing the ego, man. Because,
but I think you know, so many crappy movies along those lines when you're talking about like making some shitty kids movie with an animated dog or whatever. People take it as a job and they're like, it's a paycheck. I'm not going to put anything into this. But that's no way to actually get ahead in the industry. You need to make the best goddamn Scooby-Doo movie you can make. And then one day you get to make Guardians of the Galaxy.
But also you're making an assumption here that you have final control, right? Because you're being hired by, and I think that studio is Warner, so it's Warner Brothers. They hand in a draft. So you're not even making a Scooby-Doo movie. You're writing part of what may end up being a Scooby-Doo movie. And you'll probably be rewritten like 4 or 5 times. throughout that process.
That doesn't change the fact that you still, if not only if you want to succeed in this industry, but if you want to be happy while you're working in this industry, you have to find something that you connect to in the material, no matter what the material is.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And I think you have to, enjoy the process as much as possible, because, where things totally end up in some ways might be beyond your control, but you have to find kind of happiness and satisfaction and creative fulfillment in the day-to-day moment of being able to be part of something creative and do that. And
I think that's big what you just said. That's huge.
Yeah,
it's like not focusing on the it's not focusing on that end result.
Mm-hmm.
And be like, okay, when this happens, then
right. We all want to kind of like assume that the grass is greener on the other side of the fence, but it's greenest where it's watered, people. Okay, so but that's a part of the process. Where you are, you make the best situation possible,
mm-hmm.
and that's the most important thing, because otherwise you're always looking around the corner in a weird way for some type of satisfaction or fulfillment that you may or may not kind of happen, but it is happening. It's happening right now, and you have to like focus in on that moment while you're doing it.
So yeah, and I think there's another interesting, I guess, conflict that occurs like when someone's navigating their career, and it's like, do you want to be part of someone else's process or create your own process?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's always been been a weird balance for me in a lot of ways.
Because you're a DIY guy.
Yes, exactly. I'm a DIY guy.
Purposes, you're a DIY guy,
right? But but I also, I'm a DIY guy with, I'll say, a certain level of commercial sensibility. I don't know if that
absolutely
makes sense. Yeah. So it's kind of trying to find kind of a balance, because in some ways, if you want to really go into that commercial sensibility aspect, you can get a job on one of the bigger productions.
Right.
But if you want to do the DIY thing, then there's the indie route. So there's, I've kind of always had to kind of, go back in a weird way and forth between kind of finding that thing, because, my process is, somewhat fairly involved. It doesn't mean though that I can't let go of the other aspects of filmmaking. I just feel like I'm kind of an all-in type of person. So I really like to be as much invested in a process as possible. But
what I think is like interesting about, one of the many things that's like fascinating about you is you are a DIY guy who's super collaborative. Yeah. That's unusual.
Yeah.
Because usually like the DIY people are like control freaks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and I think that, for me, it's like, I think that like when people see, hopefully they gain a certain level of confidence in the person, if they see that, wow, you can do some of these things and stuff like that. But I always like to keep a feeling or an attitude that I'm very open, and I love, obviously, other people's ideas, and like people will see things from their perspective that is just like, well, I wouldn't have thought of that. But like, then you apply that DIY kind of, aspect to it, and it creates something kind of cool, which I think is a lot of what we were doing.
You're a scalable DIY guy.
Yeah.
And by that, I mean like you could jump to a much bigger production
mm-hmm.
and be able to communicate with department heads.
Yeah.
That's also not always the case.
Yeah, I like,
which is interesting.
I mean, I like people, Sam. I mean, I know you said earlier you don't like. No, I'm just kidding.
I like people. I just don't like being around them.
Why?
No,
Why?
Sam is one of the best guys you can.
Why don't you like being around them?
I am an introvert, and I mean that in like the sense that I am actually an introvert, not the way that people call themselves introverts. It's cool to be an introvert. I have to be alone the majority of the day. And if I'm not, I get anxious, I get upset, like it like drains my energy really, really quickly being around other people. And it always has.
Unilaterally, there's not like, but there are these 4 people in my life. If I'm around them, I feel recharged.
Some people are easier than others. I can obviously be around my wife more than this asshole over here. But
Understandable.
no, but I can be around you and Ken for longer than I can be around most other people. But even then, it's like a couple hours, and then I need to break off and be alone again.
I hope people know what a treat it is that we have Sam sitting here, because we got him here. He's on camera, and he's a wealth of knowledge.
Yeah, you are a wealth of. So what was your experience like at Cannes? You're wearing the Cannes series shirt. Obviously, Guardians of Justice got into Cannes series.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't go. You guys went.
Yeah.
So we have like a nice video montage of you guys there.
Yeah. So, well, this gets a little bit personal. I had a lot of trouble emotionally at Cannes series for a couple reasons. Number one, even though I love you, Graham, and Sharni, I was never alone, and that was really difficult for me. And then the experience of being in these big crowds around other people, especially when we were like getting our photos taken on the red carpet. There are all the people, the lights flashing and cameras. I found that experience to be just like so unbelievably overwhelming. And while I look back on it, I'm like, oh, I'm so glad I got to do that. In the moment, it was really anxiety inducing. And I think, if you want to be a filmmaker, you do, and you have these kinds of problems being around other people for extended periods of time, you have to be prepared to deal with that in whatever way you can.
So this is interesting. Did you know going in that you would have anxiety?
Yes. I think my anxiety had gotten so much worse because of COVID and spending even less time around other people than I ever had before. I thought I would do better than I did. The only time it really broke me was when we had the actual screening of the pilot, and like right before the lights went down, I just turned to Graham, who was next to me, and I was like, I'm sorry, I can't be here. I gotta go.
And you ran away?
Yeah.
So you knew that there would be some degree of anxiety. You didn't know the extent of it, but you knew there'd be like somewhere between pretty bad and not good.
Yeah.
Why'd you go?
Well, because it was going to be an experience that I had never had before. And I genuinely had a great time, and I knew I was going to have a great time 95% of the time. I mean, the city of Cannes is amazing. I think it may be the greatest city I have ever been to in my life. It is incredible. And the moments, before and after the anxiety were wonderful. Okay. Really, and they were as wonderful as I thought they were going to be. But also, I don't want to live my life in fear of those moments, even though I know I have those difficulties. But if you just give into it and be like, okay, I'm never going to do anything ever because I have these difficulties, then you might as well become Howard Hughes and live in a single room with shoeboxes on your feet and piss into mason jars, But one of the things that I've learned in therapy too is like, exactly that. I have to engage with the things that make me uncomfortable, or they will consume me, and I don't want that to happen.
Do you get more comfortable the more you do it?
Historically, yes. Okay. So like when I was a kid, and we're really getting personal now, aren't we? Mm-hmm. When I was a kid, until like age 11 or 12, I had trouble like having a conversation with another human being that wasn't an immediate family member.
Got it.
Like I couldn't go up to another kid and like start talking to them or playing with them or anything like that. It got better in high school and then better in college and then better as an adult. but it was never great, and it's always been a little bit of a struggle to, like, again, I'm very proud of myself for being here right now having a conversation.
That's a form of bravery, dude.
Yeah.
That's bravery.
Yeah.
It's like facing the fear head on. So what you're saying is Captain Laserhawk, let's say it gets into Sundance.
Yeah.
We're now playing at Sundance.
Yeah.
That is going to be less anxiety inducing for you than the Guardians of Justice getting into Cannes and
Yes.
being there.
Yes.
You'll still experience it. You may still experience the anxiety, but you're going to face it head on and not let it deter you from showing up.
Right.
Okay.
I will always go. I don't know if I'm going to make it through whatever the event is, whatever the thing is that we're doing. I will always show up. In the case of the Guardians premiere, I had a panic attack.
Yeah.
It was like a physical, visceral reaction. I literally couldn't be in that space anymore, or I was going to like start crying or something, you know?
Wow.
But you know what? Then after the show,
it was very sweet. Well, I got to back up. So I go, and it's like, this is at like 9 a.m. in the morning. And so I go to like the nearest wine bar on the beach. And I'm like, okay, I'll have some food, I'll have some breakfast, I'll drink some wine. So I order a bottle of wine, and then I order the food. And they're like, no, we don't start serving food until noon. And I've just paid like 30 euros for this bottle of wine. So like, I'm drinking this.
Wow.
So I sat there for like 3 hours on the beach, just getting very, very drunk. And then all of a sudden I see Graham just wandering around. I'm like, wait, why is Graham there? And then I see Ken and Sharni, and they'd come to find me.
We
found
It's
him.
very sweet.
we found him, and then we had a great lunch on the beach.
Yeah.
It was awesome. Yeah.
No, that's amazing.
Yeah.
I have the same feeling,
Yeah.
by the way. That's why I didn't go.
No, I figured that was why.
That's literally why I didn't show up to the Cannes
I thought it was great.
series.
Oh, that was
Like
fun.
they
well, except for one moment.
Yeah.
Have we told you about the mosquito?
no.
I got bit by a mosquito.
You
Okay.
got bit by a mosquito?
So backstory: Ken,
This is a wild one.
Graham, and I, and Sharni, the Speed lead actress, are all staying in an Airbnb together. Sharni goes to the hotel across the street from the red carpet where we're getting our pictures taken and doing the whole thing. She goes early to change and get makeup done and all that stuff. Graham, being a gentleman, walks her there. So it's just me and Ken.
Sam, being a gentleman, says, "I'll stay with Ken." We'll
Yeah,
walk over
exactly.
together. Thank goodness.
So
Right.
Ken and I hang out a little bit, and then we start putting on our suits and jackets and everything. And we've got like 10 minutes before we're supposed to be there. And Ken comes out of his room and he goes, "Sam, do I have a mosquito bite on my forehead?"
Right. If you remember the scene in Tommy Boy where he's like, "It doesn't hurt here or here, but right here," like that's what it was. And I was like, right there. And I'm talking, it was a goose egg.
It
Oh,
was
wow.
it was the largest mosquito bite I had ever seen.
It was huge.
And I want to emphasize, I'm not saying it was a big mosquito bite. What I am saying is it is the largest mosquito bite I
You got
have
me good.
ever seen.
It got me
Wow.
It was this big, right dead center. It looked like a bullseye from Daredevil, just dead
Yeah.
center right in
Yeah.
his forehead.
Glad we're telling this story. I'm just kidding.
So then what happened?
So then Sam, you know, a lot of people, if you're like, do I got something? They might be like, oh yeah, you do. Sam's face just was like, what? Like that, like
Wow.
absolutely like, and so he's like, I know what to do. I know what to do.
I get hydrocortisone, because I don't go anywhere without, never go anywhere without hydrocortisone, because it will cure mosquito bites,
Mhm.
especially if you're traveling.
Ice, you put ice on it.
I got a cold compress, a wet washcloth full of ice. I smeared it with hydrocortisone and then had him
This is
hold this
amazing.
cold compress
Wow.
to his head.
Sam saved
This is teamwork.
Oh yeah, he saved me.
Killed it.
It's just
5 minutes.
teamwork.
5
flat.
minutes. We walk up, back up into the thing. Totally good.
It's teamwork.
It was an unreal moment that like only
the sort of thing that happens like in those moments right before a big
like a sitcom.
Right. It's like the most important moment of our careers so far. And
all of a
we're
sudden, you're about to
dealing
have
with
your-
a crisis.
Right, you're about to have your picture taken, and all of a sudden, like you got bit by a mosquito right on your face.
Yeah,
And
it's like stepping into the puddle before prom.
yes, exactly. And Sam saved the day.
Wow.
And I sometimes wake up in a cold sweat, picturing the exact scenario. If Sam had said, "You know what, I'll just meet Ken over there," I would have just everyone been like, "Where's Ken?"
so
And I would have
glad.
found me just like
Wow.
hiding under the bed. Sam was like, "I know what to do," and he like got
You
the
said-
hydrocortisone, and he got the ice. He's like, and then I was like, I put a little dab. I'm like, "Is this good?" And he's like, "You cover it. You need to blanket that thing."
Wow.
Yeah, it
Man,
was crazy.
I'm so glad you guys had that experience.
Yeah.
I mean, not that. I mean, just the whole going to Cannes thing.
Yeah.
You know, I thought it was
Yeah.
like really, really rad.
Yeah.
Uh,
But
I
Well,
got
thank you
to,
for
yes, thank you.
but I got to like enjoy it vicariously through you guys. Because had I been there, I would not have had a good time.
What would have been the scenario if you had come with us?
I would have felt responsible for you guys.
He means he would have paid for everything,
Oh.
which you know.
Yeah. No, I would have felt like I just wouldn't have had a good time because it was just such a complicated, complex.
You would have been concerned about whether we were having a good time.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. And I wouldn't have existed in a state of just like pure enjoyment. Also, man, I'm just struggling to even articulate it. But like, it's weird. Like, it's not like I go back in time and go, "Oh man, I wish I'd been there. Oh, I missed out." Like, I don't feel that way at all. I love hearing you guys talk about it. Right? Like, I love how excited like Sharni, you know, how good of a time Sharni had, how Graham like really like morphed into the fullest expression of Graham Hughes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
You know what I mean?
killed it on that
Yeah, he
red
killed
carpet.
it. I was like, dude, you're a pro.
Yeah.
You're a pro. This is like your 17th movie
Mhm.
or show or whatever. Yeah.
He got a lot of good Tinder photos.
Absolutely. But yeah, like, I mean, premieres, they're not really my thing.
Mhm.
I like enjoy the process more than I do the celebration. And I'm kind of like on to the next.
Mhm.
I mean, I definitely agree. And this sort of goes back to what we were talking about before. Like, you can't just be in this business for the finished product. You can't be doing this just because you want to have made a movie or a TV show.
Well,
you
the
have
thing-
to do
yeah,
it because
yeah.
you want to be making.
Totally. The thing that you told me when I was like, I was not in the country and you called me and you're like, look, this would be like premiere number like 17 or whatever for you.
Mm-hmm.
That's not the situation for everyone else. And then I went, oh wow, yeah, that makes sense. So then I took myself back to, it was like 2000. I remember the first time I even went to a proper Hollywood premiere. It was like a big deal.
Which was
The Crazies.
okay.
I'm not involved in the film. So Steve Stabler, old friend of mine, ran Orion and MGM for a bit, produced Dumb and Dumber, Beverly Hills Ninja, kind of had his own mini studio back in the day. We met at this really sketchy dude's house. I'm not going to get into why the dude was sketchy, but he was like cool. And he was like, "Hey, what are you doing? What are you doing tomorrow?" I'm like, "Well, nothing." He's like, "I'm going to see the Crazies. It's like the premiere. Do you want to come?" I'm like, "All right, I'm in." And we went, and it was a company called Overture that doesn't exist anymore. They got absorbed into Relativity Media, and then obviously Relativity Media is no more. But and Overture was run by a guy named Chris McGurk, who I still have to this day have a good rapport with. Chris ran MGM and then created Overture, which was like this independent distribution company that was releasing like these it was like a competitor to Lionsgate and Summit. And it was bizarre. It was like a bizarre experience because it felt like being in a premiere of a movie. Like it was like something from a movie. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Does that make sense? What I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
There's a surreality to these events,
Right?
That if you're just watching, if you just look at photos of premieres or red carpets or something, or you don't get the sense of just how massive and strange they are to be inside.
Right. And then a few months later, it must have been months later, Taylor Lautner invited me to the Twilight premiere. Not the first one, not the second one. I think it was like the third one. It was the third Twilight movie. That was surreal. So I was like going to a Beatles concert with one of the Beatles. Because that wasn't just a premiere. That was like, we're going to shut down downtown LA.
There's going to be 10,000 screaming teenage girls and also 50-year-old women.
Right. Yeah. And that was like, it feels like a throwback to an era. Like now when I think back to this, is like, it feels like a period piece almost. I mean, I guess all memories are effectively period pieces, but like, I guess the Marvel premieres are still like that, where like Hollywood Boulevard gets shut down. But there was something like different to the Twilight, to the whole Twilight thing, because it just kind of came out of nowhere and became a cultural phenomenon for like a few years.
I don't think there's been really anything like that since. Not on that level of intensity.
Twilight?
Yeah. Among its fan base. I mean, Marvel is huge and people love it, and obviously they're very intense fans, but it's not that same kind of.
Yes. The last Comic-Con I was at, I was sitting in I can't remember, I was around a group of people.
Yeah.
And I started to connect with the guy next to me. And we start talking, blah, 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 blah. And we were remembering Comic-Con back in the day, like 15 years ago, when you could kind of just like still show up on the day and buy a ticket and walk in. And then I said,
oh no,
I made the mistake of saying out loud in a group, a bunch of people around, I said, yeah, I don't know, I think Twilight really changed things. It kind of just turned it into blah, 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 blah. And I wasn't making a statement on Twilight. I was just saying, like, this is where the shift happened.
Yeah.
And there was probably 7 or 8 people within the vicinity that turned on me and suddenly started going, well, hold on one second. Like, didn't even know. Just, I said this out loud in a group of people and that I didn't even know. And they all just turned and started to engage in the conversation. How dare I even say something about Twilight?
And then they held you down. Yeah. And that was the day you became a eunuch. It was yeah, no. So I guess I agree with your point. Yeah, it was a phenomenon the likes of which I guess we really haven't seen in a weird way. Just be careful what you say at Comic-Con.
No, I was like close to that orbit as well. Because like
Kellen
Jackson, like I went to there was an after party after the last one. It was like it was just the cast and a few people. It was like in a small room. Yeah. And then remember like Jackson, and I never drink, as you guys know.
Yeah.
But I like drank heavily that night because it was just like, whoa. As in a lot of energy, a lot of the thing. I remember Jackson Rathbone, who played one of the vampires. He like had a white truck at that point. He came in, he'd left early. He came back in the truck, picked me up and dropped me home. And I don't know what we talked about, but we were in my garage, like talking for like 45 minutes. All I remember him saying, he's like looking me in the eye and he's like, do you say that to everybody? I don't know what we talked about. Very weird. I don't.
Yeah. Well, Twilight.
Yeah. I haven't read the books, haven't seen the movies.
Did I tell you guys that I almost made the follow-up to Twilight? Did I tell you guys this story?
No. Do tell.
So Stephanie Meyer wrote another book.
Oh yeah.
The Host?
The Host, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I had access to it. I'd met Stephanie actually at the not the last, because I guess there was like part 1 and part 2 of the
third one
Of Breaking Dawn.
Yeah. So I met her at, I think, part 1. And yeah, and some producer who's a great guy, good dude, Nick Wexler, he had access to it. And somehow I was like in prime spot to produce the host and like get the rights to it and stuff like that. And then I pulled out and ran away and didn't respond to anyone's emails.
Judging by the critical reception of that movie, it may have not been the worst thing.
At the time, everyone thought I'd like was on drugs and like completely lost my mind, because this wasn't just the host. It was Stephanie Meyer's follow-up
right
to Twilight.
Mm-hmm.
It's a big deal.
That like made no. First of all, it made no sense that I even had access to this, and then it made no sense that I ran away. But the reason I ran away is interesting. I remembered this a few days ago. It's because of something Brad Pitt said to me. Because he was like, we were doing Killing Them Softly in Louisiana, and I was leaving set, so I was saying like, yeah, peace out. And then he was like, well, what do you what's next? Like, what's your plan, your thing? And I was like telling him all about the host. Like I was like, yeah, Twilight, like and I was basically, what I was doing was, I was talking about a business plan, not about something that I'm deeply passionate about. Right now, in retrospect, that's what I was doing. He kind of looks at me and he's like, and I can't impersonate him because I can't do it justice, but it's the way he delivered it. He said, "That sounds like a good bet."
Whoa!
And I was like, "Oh!" And then I went and I like thought about it for hours. I was like, "Why did he use the word bet?" Like, what the fuck? I'm not like, I don't bet. I don't. And it was like this whole, like, I kind of had like a meltdown, like an existential crisis. I'm like, why does he think I'm like a bet? What the fuck? No, I don't want to be the guy that bet. No. And then I like stopped. Then I like pulled out and ran away.
Interesting.
It was amazing.
Yeah.
He like saw right through. They say, "What are you doing, man?" And I was like, what, like 20. Like 7 at the time.
Wow. What a great response to say to somebody.
And I need to like write a bunch of those just to have ready to go whenever I want to destroy someone's self-esteem.
It was, and it was like, he was like, he was like, I don't know if you guys have seen Killing Them Softly, but he was like dressed as Jackie, and like was sitting down just looking at me, and he like, I mean, at this point I was like talking to like literally the coolest person on the planet. I mean, very cool guy, but at this moment I was just like, yeah. Wow. And literally, that sounds like a good bet. Changed the trajectory of my life.
Wow. He's gonna listen to this and be like, dude, I was fucking stoned when I said that.
Yeah.
I don't remember that.
Yeah, I mean, look, when you look up to someone, right?
Yeah.
At that point, they're just saying random things, and but no, like he was actually taking it in what I was saying. I was like, that sounds like a good bet. I was telling James Vanderbeek this story, like last week when I was in Texas. Wait, today's Friday. No, so it was earlier this week. We were talking about it earlier this week. That's when I remembered this whole story. And he did an impression of that sounds like a good bet. And I was like, oh, that's exactly the delivery. Like, right, that's exactly the delivery. And yeah, then we like deconstructed it. And yeah, I guess that's like a thing that like Americans say, like, that sounds like a good bet.
Yeah.
Is that
no, that's a common expression.
Is it? I'd never heard that before.
Yeah. Do you remember what you said to me in our first meeting within like 5 minutes of meeting me?
No.
You were so it was you, me, and Joseph Kahn, and it was mostly Joseph and me talking. I think you were on like a meeting in your AirPods or listening to something else, and you just stop whatever we were talking about, and you just jump in and you say, "Sam, you strike me as somebody who only has friends that are older than you." And then you just go back to what you were listening to. And number one, weirdly true. And number two, I was thinking about that for days. Like, how did he pick up on that? Why did he feel the need to say it? What does it mean?
Right. No, yeah.
Am I that obvious? You're an old soul in a great way. So, but Addie also has a certain sensibility. So
A way of reading your soul.
Yeah.
But this was that was my version of that, having Brad Pitt say that sounds like a good bet. Which it might have just been an offhanded comment, but it was like, but he was definitely like kind of like reading between the lines, where he's like, you're clearly not passionate about this, dude.
Mm-hmm.
Because, you guys know me. I'm like a passionate dude. If I'm like into something, I'm into something.
Yeah.
The moment I'm like, oh, it would be a great business plan.
right.
It doesn't work. And I know that now. I didn't know that at 27. I just knew that like I'm talking to the coolest dude on the planet. And he said something that I don't quite understand. And I need to spend days deconstructing the meaning of this.
Mm-hmm. What would have been something he could have said that, like, would have been, like, if he'd just been like, oh, yeah, that sounds great. I mean, it was the specific phrase of, that sounds like a good bet.
It was the phrase, it's not just the phrase, it was the way he delivered it and the way he was looking at me, when he said it. Because it wasn't like, because he was clearly like paying attention. He was like kind of like, it was like he was peering into my soul when he said it.
Mm-hmm.
It's like he knew the exact thing to say at that point in time. Look, and on part of the background here is I had a relationship with Andrew Dominik,
right,
who directed The Assassination of Jesse James with the coward Robert Ford, a great movie called Chopper, also was directing this movie. And Andrew's like an artist with a capital A. He's an artist. He's and I used to go out to like lunch with Andrew, like take him out to lunch, just pick his brain, just to like learn stuff, right? I mean, the reason the main city in Guardians of Justice is called Dominicopolis is because of Andrew Dominik. So on some level, the dude was probably, Brad Pitt was probably going, well, you're talking to this guy. Why are you... Does it make sense?
Yeah, no, it's like you're the guy who makes ambitious, interesting movies with Andrew Dominik, this incredible filmmaker, not the guy who produces the YA follow-up to this thing that while insanely popular gets very little respect.
Right. Yeah. Which I guess also, like I guess when you get older, you see that in younger people. You can kind of like look at a younger person and be like, okay, this is the essence of who you are, maybe,
Yeah, no,
right? But when you're a young person, you don't fucking know. You're like, oh, I could be that. I could do this. Mm-hmm. And then I guess as you get older, you're like, oh, I was always going to be this thing that I'm becoming. It's just how soon did I understand it, gain self-awareness of it, and then embrace it? Mm-hmm. How long did it take me to fully embrace my true nature and my soul's journey, so to speak?
Mm-hmm. Right. I mean, I think this is along the lines of what we were talking about in the last episode in terms of telling young filmmakers, aspiring filmmakers, don't just try to be the thing that people are forcing you into.
Yeah.
You should become the thing that you're supposed to be. I don't have a more elegant way to say that.
Which also might be the thing people are forcing you into.
In some cases, sure.
Yeah. But that was like a crazy moment that I relived just a few days ago. I was like...
Had you not thought about it since when you were talking about it this week? Like that was
yes, because James was telling me the story of like how okay, so it started with, because this was like in 2011. I was going Vanderbeek lived in LA. He lived in a mountain somewhere, and we were going to go watch a movie, and I was like, okay, I'll pick you up and then we'll go watch this movie. I hadn't been driving for that long, right? And I got lost, and he lived in a fucking hill somewhere. So I wasn't getting GPS. I didn't know where the hell I was. I was like very lost. I was very confused. I was like, I don't want to be late for this movie. And I was stressed out because, you know, driving stresses me out, as you guys know. So I kind of stop at an intersection, and there's like an Escalade. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to get out and talk to this Escalade and figure out where the fuck I am and where the hell I'm trying to go. So I walk up to the car, and the window, and it's all blacked out. The window comes down, and I look, and it's Lawrence Fishburne. And I get scared, and I run away. My reaction was to like run away. Because like it was like surreal. It like felt like a like you know that Scorsese movie After Hours?
Yeah.
It felt like a scene out of After. It's like, and now Lawrence Fishburne's here. What the fuck? So I was like, it's like Morpheus, you know?
Mm-hmm.
It's like Morpheus just appeared in front of me. So I was like, I'm good. And then I like ran away. And then I saw him a few days later at the CAA had a like Golden Globes after party at like the Soho House, or a pre-party at the Soho House. And I saw Lawrence Fishburne there, and I was like, please do not recognize me. Please do not recognize me. So we were talking about that. And I was like reliving that story because James didn't know the backstory to me picking him up that night. And then he was telling me the story about how like his first year at, I think, the Golden Globes, there was like some big like TV thing. He was like a young dude. This was like his first thing. He was on the red carpet. People were like screaming his name. It was all new to him. And then all of a sudden he hears like a mountain of energy, and it's like deafening screams, like just amplified to a level 50. And he looks over, and it's Brad Pitt and Jennifer Aniston. And then Brad Pitt just stops what he's doing, walks over to him, and he's like, puts his hand out. And James was like, kind of like awestruck, right? It's fucking Brad Pitt. And he's like, and James is like, oh, hi, I'm James. And Brad looks him in the eye and he goes, I know. He shakes his hand and then walks back. People are screaming back to him, takes photos, right? And we were just talking about how comfortable that made him feel. Yeah. That he was just being like kind of acknowledged. And this dude like saw him, and Brad knew that like, hey, this is a young kid who's like going through like becoming like this famous, this fame thing, and kind of was like welcoming and kind of also peered through him.
Yeah.
And then that made me remember like, oh yeah, Brad also like said this one thing to me once that made me completely change the trajectory of my life. So
it's amazing. He kind of seems as though he has a way with this.
Brad Pitt?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think he's definitely like a magic person.
Okay.
Like, or like some sort of like wizard or something.
And next week on the Bootleg Universe podcast, we'll be bringing in Brad Pitt.
Yeah, that's not happening. That's not happening. Yeah.
Might be a good time to wrap it up.
Yeah.
It's for almost 4:00.
Is it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Wow, time flies.
All right.
The Bootleg Universe.
Let's do a little outro. Thank you for watching another episode of the Bootleg Universe podcast. I was joined today by Kenlyn Clark and Adi Shankar. We would like to thank and acknowledge our editor, Graham Hughes, who will definitely be a guest at some point. Yeah. And we'd like to thank Dr. Self-Tape, who helped us film this and all of our episodes. If you are an actor or model in the LA area, there is no easier, more convenient way to film your auditions than with Dr. Self-Tape. So thank you guys. 100%. And we will see you in the next episode.